Tonight, the Trump administration lifted federal guidelines allowing transgender students to use public school bathrooms and locker rooms matching their chosen gender identity. It will now be up to the states and school districts to interpret whether federal sex discrimination law applies to gender identity.
Fruita Bay, as you can imagine, people in the LGBT community are quite upset with these developments, and one LGBT rights activist from South Florida took to Twitter to voice her concerns. The Trump administration has lifted federal guidelines on transgender student bathroom protections. It'll now be up to states and school districts to interpret federal discrimination laws.
As a transgender teenager, I was deeply affected by the Trump administration's plan to revoke Obama's directive that was trans inclusive towards kids like myself within schools.
Jazz Jennings, a transgender teenager from South Florida who's been featured on CBS 4 News in the past, posted this video on Twitter sitting next to her mother.
I know that growing up, I had it really hard because I wasn't allowed to use the girls' restroom. I faced discrimination at such an early age, and I didn't understand why I was being treated differently.
Education Secretary Betsy DeVos said the administration has a, quote, responsibility to protect every student in America and ensure that they have the freedom to learn and thrive in a safe and trusted environment, end quote. The Attorney General says anti-bullying safeguards are still in effect.
The president's made it clear throughout the campaign that he's a firm believer in states' rights and that certain issues like this are not best dealt with at the federal level.
On Wednesday, the Sterling Heights City Council in Michigan has approved a stalled proposal to build a mosque in a step to settle discrimination lawsuits from Muslim residents and the U.S. Department of Justice. The unanimous vote was later followed by a meeting those in favor of the proposal and opponents. On Wednesday, Mayor Mike Taylor said that one mosque's opponent accused council members of working with, quote, terrorists. The 20,000 square foot mosque is expected to be built largely as proposed, but with a lower height and a plan to accommodate neighbors' concerns about parking.
Remember, the law says must be a compelling governmental interest before you may place a substantial burden on a religious institution from using land as it chooses.
That's the message U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade is sending out tonight. Religious intolerance has no place here and no place in Sterling Heights. Her message comes amid backlash from the city of Sterling Heights and their decision to turn down the building of a mosque for the Islamic community, and the reasons she says the city provided for turning them away weren't compelling. One of the reasons the city gave in their original decision: the building height, including the dome and the spears.
I remembered all the time I spent with friends at St. Blaise Catholic Church. We checked out the height of that steeple, which is 151 feet. And so looking at these reasons, we found them not so compelling.
And when she was asked why the Islamic Community Center was so adamant about building on that property they purchased, she answered very simply,
because America says you get to be where you want to be. If you own land, you don't have to leave because your neighbors don't want you there.
The timing could not have been stranger for the first visit of America's new top diplomat to Mexico. He arrived just moments ago. With immigration reform a major and contentious issue between the U.S. and Mexico, the trip could define relations for some time to come.
It is Rex Tillerson's first ever meeting as Secretary of State with Mexican President Enrique Nieto, and it could be a baptism by fire. That after Mexico's foreign minister fired this warning shot before Tillerson's departure from Washington today.
I want to say clearly and emphatically that the government of Mexico and the Mexican people do not have to accept provisions that one government unilaterally wants to impose on the other.
It was a reference to two tough new immigration enforcement memos released Tuesday from DHS Secretary John Kelly, who will accompany Tillerson to Mexico. The memos call for sending illegal immigrants who've crossed the border back to Mexico, even if they've come from other countries, while they await hearings to return them to their home countries. They call for hiring 5,000 new Border Patrol agents and 10,000 ICE agents. Under the plan, local law enforcement officers can perform duties of immigration officers as a means of force multiplication. The plan also mandates the immediate design, construction, and maintenance of a border wall built with American materials. Even before the memo's release, Mexico was disdainful of the Trump immigration policy and the wall.
Lo he dicho una y otra vez.
Mexico will not pay for any wall.
That may explain why the memo also calls on all government agencies to, quote, identify and quantify all sources of direct and indirect federal aid or assistance to the government of Mexico. That suggests that if Mexico doesn't pay for the wall, the Trump administration administration may withhold foreign aid.
The timing of the memos may reflect long-standing Trump strategy to open negotiations with a hard line. But Mexico knows something about hard negotiations too, now threatening to go to the United Nations to defend human rights if the United States does not ease up.
It's been revealed that a recent suicide bombing that killed 5 people in Iraq was reportedly carried out by a British former Guantanamo Bay detainee.
ISIS releasing this chilling picture of a smiling jihadi taken just moments before the deadly bomb attack.
And guess what? He may be a former Gitmo detainee. Jackie Vanez has the very latest on this one. Jackie, good morning. Yeah, good morning, ladies. His name is Ronald Fidler, a British-born terrorist released from Guantanamo Bay more than a decade ago, and ISIS claims that that's him right there, smiling as he returned to the battlefield over the weekend, driving a car packed with explosives toward an army base outside Mosul, one in a series of attacks believed to have killed 7 coalition soldiers. A British broadcasting report backs up that claim that Fidler was behind the wheel, tying him to Gitmo through his militant nickname, the Briton. And his horror story is not unique, unfortunately. According to the most recent U.S. intelligence figures, nearly 18% of former Gitmo detainees are confirmed to have returned to terror. And more than 12% of suspects are doing so. Those are the numbers President takes very seriously as he vows to keep Guantanamo Bay open.
Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he will continue to allow asylum seekers fleeing the United States to illegally cross the border into Canada. The Prime Minister's announcement February 21st was sparked by calls from Conservatives for him to do more to keep refugees out of the country. Many asylum seekers are leaving the US for Canada because they are afraid US President Donald Trump's immigration policies will cause them to be deported. Dozens of people were spotted illegally crossing the border into Canada during the weekend before Trudeau's announcement. And more than 450 people made legitimate claims for refugee status in January, just at border crossings in the province of Quebec alone. Although Trudeau is keeping the border open to those crossing illegally, he has promised further measures to ensure national security.
Turkish Defence Ministry officials say a rule banning headscarves in the military has been relaxed. It signifies a major shift in the armed forces, which have always seen themselves as the guardians of state secularism in the mainly Muslim country. The new rule allowing female soldiers to wear headscarves with their uniforms also reflects the influence of President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. His Islamist-rooted AK party has long campaigned to bring religion into public life.
As that ban is lifted in Turkey, it's being enforced in other parts of the world. The German state of Bavaria has announced plans to ban the full-face veil. Muslim women will not be able to wear it in government workplaces, schools and universities, and also while driving. The Interior State Minister says facial expressions and gestures are an important part of communication.
New data shows that tourism in Paris continued to decrease in 2016, while other countries showed no significant change. There were 1.5 million fewer visitors to the City of Light last year, translating into an economic loss of at least 1.3 billion euros. The government attributed the drop to the aftermath of 2 high-profile terrorist attacks in 2015, as well as the tragedy in Nice last summer. The tourist industry is worried that a perception is taking root that France is a permanent target for terrorism. Tourism from China and Japan plunged a combined 32%, as they may have preferred similar locations like Spain or Italy.
We are worried, of course, because things have not returned to normal.
Beyond terrorism, the government has imposed a long-running state of emergency and rammed through domestic policies which sparked months of high-profile protests, strikes, and arrests. Tourists may be put off by the fact that France is a police state, with thousands of machine gun-carrying soldiers patrolling streets that used to be charming and relaxing.
According to a new NBC News SurveyMonkey poll, nearly 2/3 of people in the United States are worried that the country will enter a major war within the next 4 years. Results of the poll show that 36% are very worried, while 30% are somewhat worried. Meanwhile, in terms of political parties, the poll adds that 88% of Democrats and Democratic-leaning Americans are worried about a potential war. On the other side, only 4 in 10 Republicans and Republican leaners are worried, while 60% say they are not scared about facing a major war.
The U.S. is ready to scale up its operations against Islamic State in Syria by sending more troops. That's according to the head of the U.S. Central Command.
I'm very concerned about maintaining momentum. It could be that we take on a larger burden ourselves. We might bring potentially more of our assets to bear if we need to, as opposed to relying on our partners. That's an option.
The United States already has about 500 special operations troops in Syria, and they're already operating there without the permission of the Syrian government. The tensions related to this could escalate given the many groups operating in Syria that have different goals. Throughout the war, the U.S. has supported anti-government forces. The U.S. Special Ops goal on the ground, though, is to take on ISIL in Raqqa, the terrorist organization's self-proclaimed capital. U.S. officials now say they expect Syrian, Kurdish, and Arab fighters, notably rebels, to play the leading role in seizing Raqqa. But as the head of the CENTCOM said, the U.S. could take on a larger role. That could mean more troops. The prospect that the U.S. may send more troops to Syria comes in the wake of another initiative that the Trump administration is suggesting, that is, of establishing safe zones in Syria. According to Donald Trump, it would be paid for by the Gulf states, and it would be for displaced persons inside Syria. There's no indication at this time that Gulf states would pay. The Syrian government already indicated that it would see it as a hostile act and a violation of its sovereignty if done without Syria's permission. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson has discussed the idea with the Russian foreign minister, but Moscow says it's expecting more details, while warning against a unilateral action.
We essentially believe initiatives like these should be based on the real situation on the ground in Syria, where many players, if I may say so, are present, including both troops on the ground and air forces in the Syrian skies.
Syrian pro-government media service Al-Masdaq reported this morning that Israeli aircraft were spotted in Syrian airspace conducting strikes against a Hezbollah-bound weapons convoy. According to a Syrian army source, the attack took place near the Lebanese border near Damascus and the Kalamun Mountains. No casualties have been reported at this time. The alleged Israeli warplane supposedly flew first through Lebanon to reach the target in Syria. IDF spokespersons would not comment on the strike. Israel has, however, both stated and acted on in the past that it would not allow Hezbollah to continue receiving advanced weaponry. Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah just this past Tuesday said, quote, "In the face of Israel's threats to destroy Lebanon's infrastructure, we will not abide by red lines, especially regarding Haifa's ammonia and the nuclear reactor in Dimona. Hezbollah possesses the full courage for this," end quote. Recent reports from earlier this week report the terror group leader's claims when Hezbollah had reportedly received Russian-made anti-ship missiles.
Iranian leaders have long railed against Israel, with several even threatening to wipe the Jewish state off the map. The hardline Islamic Republic's supreme leader is continuing that tradition, with claims that Israel's beginning to disintegrate amid worldwide opposition to its policies. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei's remarks come amid heightened tensions with the Jewish state, as Jerusalem continues to lobby its allies such as Washington to step up actions against Tehran.
با پدیدار شدن نشانه‌های افول رژیم صهیونیستی و ضعفی که بر متحدان اصلی آن به ویژه ایالات متحده آمریکا حاکم شده است مشاهده می‌شود که اندک اندک فضای جهانی نیز به سمت مقابله با اقدامات خصمانه و غیرقانونی و غیر انسانی رژیم صهیونیستی میل می‌کند.
The fundamentalist Shiite cleric made the inflammatory statements during the 6th annual international conference his nation hosts on behalf of the Palestinians. Khomeini went on at length to applaud the Palestinians for their heroic resistance against Israel. While utterly ignoring the Jewish people's ancient roots in the Holy Land, he dismissed Israel as being an artificial creation. The two-day event is being attended by nearly 700 delegates from 80 countries.
China has created robot police officers that are infused with facial recognition technology that help them identify and arrest criminals. They've also stationed the e-Patrol robot sheriff at the Zhengzhou East Railway Station in Henan. E-Patrol robot sheriffs are going to replace human police officers for the station's night shift. The transition seems to be running smoothly. On its first day, the ePatrol robot sheriff detected a small fire and prevented it from getting bigger.
Microsoft co-founder Bill Gates thinks we should tax companies that use robots to replace human workers. During a recent interview with Quartz, Gates said robots that replace human workers should incur taxes similar to income taxes. Gates said, quote, "Right now, the human worker who does, say, $50,000 worth of work in a factory, that income is taxed. If a robot comes in to do the same thing, you'd think that we'd tax the robot at a similar level." Gates suggests the taxes would be paid by the robot's owners or makers, and the revenue could help fund labor force retraining. The business magnate believes the revenue stream from the tax could provide out-of-work humans with new opportunities in health services, education, and other fields. If the labor and resources replaced by automation can be redirected to opportunities in other needed fields, Gates says the net effects could be positive.
Researchers are testing a new vaccine they hope will protect humans from a variety of mosquito-transmitted illnesses, including malaria, Zika, and West Nile. Instead of targeting a specific illness, this vaccine protects against the mosquito itself, its saliva to be exact. Scientists at the National Institutes of Health are launching a clinical trial of this new vaccine called AGSV. According to researchers, the vaccine is intended to trigger an immune response to a mosquito's saliva. Here's how the NIH says the vaccine works. AGSV is made up of 4 synthetic proteins from mosquito salivary glands. Those proteins should trigger a modified allergic reaction that will help block potential infection if a person is bitten by a disease-carrying mosquito. Researchers are starting a phase 1 trial of the vaccine, which is the earliest step in human tests.
Feral pigs in North Texas may soon face an apocalypse. The state's agricultural commissioner has approved the first pesticide targeting wild hogs. There's about 2.5 million of them plaguing Texas and its crops, costing the Lone Star State around $50 million a year.
However, the move has sparked outrage from hunters. They've started a petition to stop the annihilation. It's already gotten over 1,000 signatures. They're worried people, other animals, and the environment could be exposed to the poison.
20 years ago, a sheep named Dolly became an international symbol for one of the most controversial scientific subjects, cloning. Scientists at the Roslin Institute in Scotland said they successfully cloned the first mammal from an adult cell. But soon after, people were worried scientists could clone humans. The National Bioethics Advisory Commission said it was morally unacceptable to clone a child. And then President Bill Clinton passed a 5-year ban on any research into human cloning. Since Dolly, scientists have cloned other animals, including cows, chickens, horses, and rats, citing their benefit for medicine and agriculture. In 2008, the Food and Drug Administration said meat and milk from cloned animals is as safe as the non-cloned variety. Other scientists have studied ways to save endangered species and even bring back extinct animals using cloning. A team at Harvard University is even trying that with the woolly mammoth. A Gallup poll found the public has been more okay with animal cloning over the years, but human cloning is still considered taboo. Most of the human cloning arguments center around reproduction. Supporters say it one day could help infertile couples have children. But the majority of scientists and lawmakers still consider it immoral and argue even if they could do it, there's a high chance of abnormalities. But the public opinion of human cloning is also changing. In 2016, 13% said human cloning is moral, a jump of 6 percentage points since 2001. This might be due to human cloning's potential medical benefits, like growing organs. In a recent study, scientists said they created the first successful human-animal hybrids when they put human cells into a pig. The researchers wanted to test growing human organs inside animals, which could help people needing organ transplants. But lawmakers and the public are still divided. Experiments like the human-pig hybrid study can't get public funding. It may be a few more decades before we have Dolly, the human clone.
Houston area residents woke up to a colorful view as severe thunderstorms began to roll in Monday morning. And this time, it wasn't a rainbow. The sky lit up with vivid shades of pink and purple as the sun rose, and social media users couldn't help but connect the stunning sky's magenta hue with Prince's famous Purple Rain song. It was unlike anything residents had seen before. Sky watchers say the purple glow lasted for about 2 hours. Some reported seeing the colorful sky as early as 5:30 a.m. and say it started to fade to gray around 7:15.
For as long as humans have looked to the heavens, we've wondered whether there is life on other planets. Chip Reed on a discovery announced today that has scientists very excited.
For astronomers, finding 7 Earth-sized planets orbiting a single sun is like finding a pot of gold next to the Holy Grail. NASA scientist Thomas Zurbuchen.
The discovery gives us a hint that finding a second Earth is not just a matter of if, but when.
In fact, it may be the best place yet found to search for life. Sarah Seeger of MIT.
We've made a giant accelerated leap forward in the search for habitable worlds.
3 of the planets are in the so-called Goldilocks zone. Not too hot, not too cold, just the right temperature for liquid water, the key to life as we know it. It's possible all 7 have water. A NASA artist with a vivid imagination thinks this is what the 5th planet could look like. Its neighbors easily visible and the sun much closer than ours. Fortunately, it's also much smaller and cooler, which keeps the planets from getting fried. These heavenly bodies are 39 light-years away. That's 235 trillion miles, but by astronomical standards, they're practically next door. Close enough that when the James Webb Space Telescope is launched next year, it will be able to analyze the planet's atmospheres, a big step toward answering the question, are we alone?
Sharnique Desant and Ashley Jordan had never met before. Sharnique is a customer service manager here at Walmart. She wasn't even supposed to be working that night, but she's glad she was because she says she's blessed to be a blessing to someone else.
This one goes with me.
Ashley Jordan is a stay-at-home mom to 3 little girls. She says her husband works long hours so she can afford to stay home.
Half the time, his whole check goes to groceries and household stuff.
Saturday night's dreaded trip to Walmart was no different.
We had 2 full buggies, one with just groceries and the other with household stuff.
Jordan, her husband, and their 1-year-old Kinsey were in the checkout line when they met Sharnique Desant.
I say, ma'am, God told me to give you $100. And she was like, what? I said, God told me to give you $100.
Jordan is still in shock.
Nobody's ever done anything like that for me before, ever.
Desant cut the family's grocery bill in half.
You basically do not know what others are going through. I didn't even know, like, she had hard times or was on hard times or struggling. I didn't know any of that. I never seen her.
God just told you to give her.
Yeah, God just said, give her $100.
Desant did not know anything about Jordan, including she had 2 other young children at home, Kaylee and Aubrey.
Everybody goes through this struggle where they can't make it some months they can do it. We can make it. We have the money. It's just these past couple weeks have been hard, and I think everybody has those moments. It's not just about us. So I hope other people can, see what she did and, pay it forward to somebody one day, because I definitely will.
The 2 took a picture, which Jordan quickly posted on Facebook, along with the story.
There's really nothing special about us. I didn't expect this to go that viral. I just wanted to say a thank you to her. I just want to do right and be right.